And a very, very fond hello to you all comic book fans. My name is Jordan Clays, and I'm here again on behalf of Lousy With. Once again, it is my honor to be able to introduce Emma Kubert. And Emma, how are you doing today? Nice to be speaking with you.
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I am just fine, thank you. Now, for anyone listening who might have missed our last comic conversation, Emma is the co-creator and artist behind the ongoing series Inkblot, currently published by Image Comics. And today she is making her triumphant return because we are discussing her latest Kickstarter project with co-creator John Stanisci, and that is titled Foundlings.
Yes.
Yes. So let's talk Foundlings, Emma. So
All right.
brand new Kickstarter. Like I said, John Stanisci and you guys are tackling this one. So
Yeah.
for anyone who might be listening and might not already be aware, what can you tell us about Foundlings?
Well, me and John actually came together when we basically were all supposed to go inside in the start of the pandemic, and he had an idea that he really wanted someone who drew really kind of young adult type of style, did really well storytelling, and I'm like, that's me, I hope. And so we connected, and he had this really, really amazing idea, and it was called Foundlings. And I mean, when we first connected, it was really the only thing that he really had was a couple of sentences. He had it it was it's basically about a group of children with disabilities. They were casted out of society and brought to the Foundlings Hospital, which is where parents leave their children if they can't take care of them. So they already feel outcasted from society, but then, the world turns, apocalypse happens, the Russians invade the United States, and these children that were once outcasted by society are now the last hope for the world.
So we've got a true underdog story in the making by the sounds of things.
It's honestly probably one of the biggest underdog stories anyone will listen to or read or whatever I need to say. And it really is relatable in that fact where, these children, they feel very unwanted, but they find a family throughout themselves and throughout their journey, which is really intense, really crazy.
No,
And
definitely. By the sounds of things, it certainly sounds like it, to say the least. And I know that one of the interesting things that you had mentioned is going back to that whole concept of the underdog. Is that sort of something that everyone on some level can relate to, at least in some small
oh,
capacity?
yes, I definitely agree. I think underdog stories, I think stories about, I guess, the other, whether, it doesn't matter who it is, it just, you feel like an outcast in the society that you grew up in. I feel like everyone has felt that way um, at some point in their life. And that's why you can easily relate to the main characters of the story. There's Sujong, who is our main character. She's probably around 12 or 13 years old, and the rest are a little younger than that. And you're just following these children going through the most intense situation, having to not only overcome the challenges that are around them, which are big because the world is basically dying, but they have to overcome their own challenges within themselves. And that goes for like the specific I guess differences is the word that we were supposed to use, disabilities, if you don't really understand differences, but that's really the whole point. It's about these children coming back and trying to just save the world that once outcasted them, and they're the only hope.
The only hope, the
The
only
only
hope.
hope.
And I think what really intrigued me about this story initially is it kind of tied back into something that you had mentioned the last time we spoke, where, you know, visibility in comics up until very recently has been almost non-existent. It's very kind of stereotypical alpha macho, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea of seeing stories about people whom you wouldn't necessarily see highlighted in a comic book medium is enticing, to say the least.
Exactly. I mean, one, it makes a great story to use different kinds of characters. Just because, like, from a creator standpoint, if you have characters that are different from one another, they easily bounce off of each other, and it easily gives you a very interesting dynamic throughout the entire story. So you might as well just start using different characters, because that can really just play into like all kinds of different stories that we can create and be intrigued by. So, yeah.
No, and again, I couldn't agree with you more. I also wanted to just quickly ask you, because I'd wanted to talk to you about this as well, because you mentioned it again, that when John approached you with this idea, he had kind of just a few, like literally a few sentences. It kind of seems similar to how when you were telling me your process with Rusty and creating Inkblot, you might be given just a paragraph or a few short sentences, and you go off and are able to create 20 plus pages off of a very simple idea or concept.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a little different, and it's really, it's definitely more distinguished our roles. Like, John is definitely the writer. He is the one that's leading me to create, the whole story. I would kind of, I would associate it with like he's the screenplay writer and I'm the director. So it's like he's the one who's showing us the way, and I'm the one who's like showing you all the visuals on the whole project. But it is very similar. I mean, the way that John writes the script, it's not very much like page one, panel one. He really does it like a plot script, which is what I really like, because you have a lot of room for creativity there and a lot of different kind of storytelling, which I really love, especially in a story that's just so intense and suspenseful. I really need to like hype up, the intensity in it, because this isn't exactly like Inkblot. It's not whimsical. It's not, it's not magical in any way. It really is like a very intense, suspenseful, like sci-fi, dramatic, kind of humorous, because you need a little humor in your drama, of course. Story. So it really, I mean, I would say the little humor comes from the kids, because they're kids, of course. But John really did a good job on like really describing everything, because he came from more of, before he did comics, I mean, he did more of theater. So he really thinks about it as a visual, and that's the way I think about it too. And I feel like a lot of writers should think that way when they are writing for comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you as an artist, like when you're working with someone, do you prefer to kind of have a very, like, are you someone who kind of likes a writer to kind of present to you like, I want, this down to, the every single last minute detail on every single panel? Or are you kind of someone who appreciates more the leeway to just be like, give me the structure and let me run with it type of thing?
Well, I would say it's just like however the writer is comfortable writing the story is the way that I'll tell it. So if a writer really needs to write every single little detail, they can, but for me personally, I really like it when a writer writes kind of like a loose plot. For me, if we're separated, with me and Rusty, it's a little different because we live in the same room. So
he's not going to do the Dr. Evil spin in the chair, is he? Okay.
I'm not scaring you this time. That was really funny. Okay. But no, I mean, like with John, it really is just like he is writing down a plot, and I can really feel the visuals from it, like the way he describes things as he's writing. It really, really lends a hand to me knowing like basically the emotion in the scene And that's what really helps me when I'm drawing. I mean, like, especially with this kind of story, which is like, it's like Stranger Things, Goonies, it's high stakes type of book, type of story. So you definitely want that emotional intensity in it. And I want to bring it into the artwork so that you feel like you're in this apocalyptic, crazy world that these kids are living in, and you're just going on the journey with them. So
Well, judging by some of the preview pages that are up on the Kickstarter, I'd say you're definitely off to a good start. Now, a lot of people, I would think, probably would first associate John as being, definitely maybe more so known for his art as opposed to the writing, or at least, right now. And same thing. And I just tie it back to kind of your, what you have going on with Rusty as well, who is a very, very formidable artist in his own right as well. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was curious, do you actively seek out partnerships or creative partnerships where the other person does have that background there where you can kind of relate in that way? Or is that just a coincidence?
Honestly, it's probably just a coincidence, but I can see why I would. And it's mostly because if a writer, has that kind of background, that experience with art, they know how to write better for art, like for the story, to let the visuals tell the story, while like the writing really just kind of, I don't know, like the dialogue sets it off and everything. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's really important. I mean, I guess it's a coincidence, but now I'm thinking about it more. I mean, for me, I think it's really important for anyone who's working on a comic to really know how to tell a story through visuals. Like if you're an editor, letterer, colorist, all that kind of stuff, I think you have to know a little bit about everything in order to pull off a whole story that's as cinematic as, the comic book medium. So I think just pairing with Rusty was really easy, obviously, but pairing with John, I mean, like, he already had background in art and inking for DC especially, and he had background in theater and TV. So I was really like, okay, he knows what a visual, he knows the visuals. And when he just like started writing for the project, I knew, I was like, all right, this guy knows. All right. And I kind of just, for that, I really just took a leap of faith. I mean, like, John and I just connected on LinkedIn, and at this time I was really just trying to broaden like my comic book industry, I guess, what's the word? Connections?
Yeah, your network.
Yeah, I guess. I just wanted to be connected with more people in the industry, and comics, it's really hard to be connected because everyone's freelance. So I figured, I'd start by going on LinkedIn, see who's on there, start connecting with people. And then I connected with John, and then up front he was just like, I think you would be really good for this idea that I have, and just, you don't have to say yes or anything, just take a look. And I'm like, okay. And then I took a look and I was like, okay, because I had just a gut feeling about this idea. I thought it was really something special, and I'm obviously a sucker for the underdog too, so I can't help it.
Now, and I mean, like you were saying, it kind of touches on the YA, aspect that you're obviously a big fan of as well. But I think that's so neat, in a time where you've just literally released your first kind of ongoing series that's, gone back to second print. You're still hustling and you're on LinkedIn looking for more creative avenues. I just find that remarkable.
I mean, I'm constantly trying to just propel myself forward, just because I love drawing. I love working on projects, and it's kind of like I'd rather have a couple projects that I'm working on at once than just working on one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I know that I can handle it, and it's just what I love, so I like to do it. you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
Yeah.
it definitely seems like it, because I remember at the beginning of the month, because I follow you on Instagram as well, and one of the stories that you came out with really early on was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be doing Inktober, but here's, just something for fun.
I still do
Yeah, every
it.
single day there has been an Inktober and a creative process along. So it's you're definitely not one to sit idly by, that's for sure.
I'm definitely not, but but I also very much plan a lot. So that's really the key to my success
Hmm.
is doing all this stuff. I remember someone on Instagram messaged me and was just like, "How do you do all the things that you do?" Because I do a lot, but it really is just about scheduling for me. I mean, I work pretty fast. So all I have to do is make sure that I get a certain amount done every day, and here we are.
Now, one thing I also wanted to talk about, because you mentioned it briefly in kind of your introduction to the book, but what a lot of people might not realize is that Foundlings Hospital is actually a real place. This is
It
based
is.
on a true concept, correct?
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, it was definitely more, obviously, it was more John who discovered this, and he discovered this like 10 years ago. I mean, like he was talking to a woman that was, I think, a nurse at the Foundlings Hospital, and he just found out more about it, and he really just had an idea just to, what if like the children that were left there were actually the world's only like last hope. And he kind of brewed on that for years, and then when the pandemic hit, he was like, maybe that's the last hope part, you know.
Hmm.
And that's what really inspired him to really get this story going. It was the pandemic that it just stopped, and it really melded his story idea together. And then
Hmm.
he was like, Emma. And I was like, okay.
No, and again, just speaking about things that kind of enticed me or drew me to the story, like listening to that kind of trailer video that you guys have, and when he describes, just that heart-wrenching tale of these parents who are kind of forced to leave their children. They're either
Yeah.
it just really struck a nerve, and I agree. I think now is such a good time to tell that story. It's got such kind of like X-Men meets Stranger Things meets Goonie vibes, which is
Yes.
just
Yes.
fantastic.
that's that's really that's exactly how I describe this story, and that's why I really love it. I mean, like as I said before, it's a big like kind of 180 from Inkblot. It's a very, very different type of story, but it's still, it intrigues me just so much. I think it's so interesting to have everything just paradox, or I don't know how to say this, or paradox from one another. Whatever.
I've got you. I'm with you. I'm
you,
following your
you
thought.
guys know. But
Now,
yeah.
one thing I also wanted to ask you, because both you and John are clearly at this point well-established creators. I would presume you would probably be able to take this story to any publication on the face of planet Earth, and they'd probably welcome you both with open arms.
I hope so.
So why the choice to do a Kickstarter then?
Well, I think it was basically throughout the pandemic, the comics industry kind of died and came back. So during this time, no one was picking up new stories. Every company had like a freeze on their creator-owned stories and accepting stories and everything. So what we saw was that a lot of comic book artists and creators and writers were actually turning to Kickstarter to get their funding for the stories that they wanted to create. And I mean, that was kind of like a no-brainer, where we just like, okay, might as well try to get paid for work now by people that actually want to read our story. And then later on, after the Kickstarter, if it's successful, we can bring it to companies, and they'll already see that there's engagement, and they're already going to see that there is money put towards it anyway. So
Mhm.
I would say this is just a step to get to the companies, to get to that big publication, because for our Kickstarter, our goal is to create basically a one issue, but our long-term goal is to create an entire graphic novel. And that's what we would want to bring to the companies, is that we would want to create the giant graphic novel with the companies, unless we get enough money in the Kickstarter. But who knows? You know, you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
But that's the main goal there,
Mhm.
is to really just get this off the ground, so that not only do people notice, but companies that we can publish the whole story, they hopefully they'll notice too.
Mhm. For sure.
Which I think some of them have, so we'll see.
Ooh. All right. All right.
Little teaser.
Ooh. All right. Okay. Okay. I like that. So, as someone who kind of literally is simultaneously doing both things, you've got one book coming out through Image, you've got another book coming out through this Kickstarter campaign. Are there kind of advantages or disadvantages to one channel over the other? Do you find challenges and benefits from one to the other, anything like that? Or is it all kind of, for you, it's all the same at the end of the day?
I mean, I think for me, I just have to make sure that I stay on topic.
Hmm.
Like, my mind can, like, artists are weird and their minds are scattered everywhere, and mine's no different. So I have to just make sure that I'm staying on task with everything. But honestly, I would probably be looking to do another book as well, just as like with the time that I have. But working on going from Inkblot to Foundlings, it's actually kind of really nice, because they're both very, very different. So if I feel like doing something, more magical and whimsical, I can do more Inkblot that day. But if I feel like getting intense and emotional and all that kind of stuff, I can go more Foundlings with that. So I don't know. I really like the different types of stories, not just, reading them, but
Hmm.
working on them, because it's a nice change of pace, like, constantly. So
Hmm.
I really like it.
And I completely agree. Like up until the world kind of went the way that it did, I, like everyone else, I got my comics from my local comic book store, 98% of the
Yeah.
time. I had never invested or even really heard of Kickstarter up until a few
Mhm.
months ago. And I guess what I was wondering, do you see this as the next evolution in comics, or do you see this as sort of like the Napster of the comic book industry?
I see it as maybe like, can you repeat that last part? I think you broke up on me.
Sure. No, 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 no. I apologize. I was just saying, do you think it's sort of the next evolution that companies are, and that kind of to survive, companies are going to have to embrace this? Or do you see this going another route? And could this potentially be like the comic book equivalent of Napster? And could we potentially see creators moving away from the big three and solely putting out independent books, do you think?
I could definitely see the latter
Hmm.
happening. I don't think I can ever see Kickstarter replacing any of the companies, but I
Hmm.
definitely can see, you know, definitely moving, like, creators moving away from the big two, just because they can be a little limiting,
Hmm.
especially since, they're geared towards superheroes. So if you
Hmm.
love superheroes, you go there. But if you
Yeah.
don't, then there's not really a lot to go with if if you like comics. So you might as well move towards more indie stuff, Image, other things. And then while Kickstarter, if bigger creators start using Kickstarter more, that's probably going to be just another platform to use for creators. Like, I know a lot of artists use Patreon, which is like a big, thing. They do like a monthly art thing, and then you pay a certain amount. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I see it, like with
Hmm.
Kickstarter. It's not like a major it's not going to replace anything, but it's just going to add to it. And I think it's going to add like a lot to it. I think it's going to be really great, especially for people who want to self-publish, which, you know, you take your ideas to all the companies, they say no, and then you say, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. That's kind of how I see it, and that's what I really like about it, and that's what I like about a lot of these websites that are going more into, you know, sponsoring creator-owned type of comics, and stories just in general. I really like it.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, you know, someone, you know, any of the big names in the industry, or in any industry for that matter, are always going to do well in a medium like that. But I think what's interesting about Kickstarter is that you have the potential to discover, you know, it's kind of like Usher finding Justin Bieber's video on YouTube, like 50, you know what I mean? Like the next kind of person could be discovered through that medium, and in a much more organic way, which to me, I don't really know if we've ever had that in comics before, or at least not for a long time.
I have no idea, but I just know that I agree with you that I really think it is something that's very, I think it's important. I think it's important for creators, not only the big ones, but smaller ones like me, like whoever else is at this level, just trying to start out. It really is a good way to just get your work out there.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you froze, Jordan.
Oh, we are technical difficulties, of course. Are we good? Are we good? Am I frozen again?
I think we're good. I mean, my Wi-Fi's strong.
Okay. All right. I think we're all right here. I see you. So if you can see me, we'll just carry on.
I can see you.
Okay, good. Now, you kind of mentioned it earlier, because you were saying obviously the stretch goals would inevitably be to make more issues, kind of tell the entire story at the end of the day.
Yes.
But one thing that I also thought was very interesting is that there is this other very ambivalent kind of, or that's not the word, what am I looking for? Kind of ambiguous is sorry, the word I was looking for, a statement where it says we want to develop it into other media.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Being with your kind of background in animation, are we talking like an animated series or feature, perhaps?
I would say probably more live action. Is
Ooh.
what we would want it to go in. Probably, like, what we eventually want is what John has in mind is not just a graphic novel, but a series of graphic novels. And then based off of that, have TVs or film, have it go into one of those. I would say more live action. I could see it more live action, probably more in the vein of, you know, like, as you said, X-Men, Stranger Things, Goonies. That really is what resonates. That's like the aesthetic of this is what I would say. But I could definitely see it being adapted to other medias. I'm not great with words.
maybe another little teaser there as well, of things to potentially come.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, one thing, now, like I said, I've seen some of the preview pages, and if anyone's listening who hasn't already, you definitely need to go and check out the Kickstarter and have a look for yourself. But of all the characters that I kind of saw, the one that intrigued me the most, and the one that I was like, okay, this is definitely Emma, is the three-legged cat. So what is the story, if anything, with the three-legged cat, I wanted to ask you?
Well, I don't want to give a lot away, but the three-legged cat actually comes later in the story. You probably wouldn't see the cat in the first issue. You would see it probably more in like the third or the fourth. But the cat's name is Spartacus.
Ooh.
And I think it's a she, but I'm not positive. But this cat, they basically found this cat, and it's three-legged, and some of them want to leave this cat behind. One of them wants to keep the cat with them. And it really is kind of like, it's kind of like a representation of these children, is that no matter what's happening in the world, all they're trying to do is survive. and hoping to get to a world that's better than what they're in. So that's really what this little adorable amazing orange cat is all about. and and he did it, and John wrote this cat, he really did just for me. I mean, like, he was just like, I gotta write a cat in here somewhere, and I'm like, thanks. Like, this was needed.
That's exactly what I was thinking. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I know where that's coming from.
Like, I think I think maybe he thought about the cat first or not, but I know he was just like, Emma's going to love this cat. And I'm like, yes, my favorite character.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I've grilled you pretty hard on Foundlings, and we've had a great discussion on that. So, kind of just like before, I just thought we could maybe leave things on a bit of a lighter note and just kind of pick your brain on a few topical questions, being that it is the Halloween season. And
I'm ready.
all right.
I'm ready. Give me this quick fire.
All right. So, favorite scary movie?
Ooh, I don't really like scary movies. I like the spookier ones.
Okay, favorite spooky movie then.
All right, I'll say Nightmare Before Christmas.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So follow-up question, is The Nightmare Before Christmas a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie?
I say both if you're in the right mindset, but maybe more Halloween.
I completely agree with you.
For me, it might be both, but you know, it's one of my favorite movies. I can't help it. Love Tim Burton movies growing up, even though this one is more just produced by him. But whatever.
But I think he wrote the story or the original story or something like that too. So whatever. It's him. When you
produced it, it's Tim Burton-esque.
Yeah. When you look at that, for sure. Yeah. No, and I'm with you. That's why I find the best time to watch Nightmare Before Christmas is right on Halloween, because then you just segue ever so nicely into watching Christmas movies.
Oh, yes. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But you're Canadian, so we actually, right after Halloween, we have Thanksgiving.
Oh, yes.
And then we have Christmas, and everyone's just like, why are you starting Christmas now? It's not even Thanksgiving. And I kind of would rather have it the Canadian way. I like the Thanksgiving, Halloween, and then Christmas. That's what I like. I think that's cool.
We're all about spacing out the turkey dinners.
Yeah, so, right?
Yeah, that's the way that I like to look at it. What is your favorite young adult Halloween movie?
Oh my gosh. Which ones are there?
So, I mean, I guess The Nightmare Before Christmas would kind of also fall into this category, but like, are you a fan of like Hocus Pocus?
Oh, I love Hocus Pocus. I mean, all of the spooky movies, you can probably imagine that I like them. Edward Scissorhands is another one. Beetlejuice is another one. I'm just listing Tim Burton movies again.
That's
but
fine.
Who cares, because they're my favorite. And Coraline is actually one of my favorites too. Neil Gaiman. I actually read the book when I was like 9 or 10, and I got really, really scared, but still love it.
If I had read that as a child, it would have given me nightmares until I was 30. So yeah.
Like me and my mom, we read it together like at bedtime, and I was just like up for hours after that, just thinking about the buttons.
Oh my gosh, the buttons.
But I really do love that story too. I don't know. I like the creepy, spooky, but not like totally scary stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah, I would say those YA ones.
Good stuff. No, and I'm with you on the Coraline as well. I'm currently reading the audio book version of Sandman by Gaiman, and it's.
How do you like it?
Well, I keep on falling asleep, ironically enough. But no, it's absolutely mind blowing. I've read that book probably 15 or 20 times over. So
yeah, I heard it was really good. I know my brother was listening to it on audiobook as well, and he said it was awesome. So yeah, I do want to check it out, because I do love Neil Gaiman, do love Sandman. Death is one of my favorite characters.
Oh, she's so awesome.
She's so cute. can't help it.
Last one. What is your favorite YA Halloween series?
Series, honestly, probably now it's Stranger Things. I know it's maybe not Halloween totally, but it is. So it has spooky vibes to it. I'm trying to think of like some other ones. Buffy is probably definitely one. Um, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the older one. Not so much the newer one, just because I vibe more with the older, sillier one. But both are great. What about you? You tell me, because I can't think of them on the top of my head.
Here's a question for you, and this will be intriguing to know how far-reaching Canadian television is. Have you ever heard of a series called Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes, but I don't know if I've watched it.
So you might have seen it on, I think it was last year. Last year, Amazon Prime did kind of like a reboot series of sorts. Okay. But the original, and it's worth watching. I would definitely check it out. But the original Are You Afraid of the Dark is this incredibly under budget, amazingly brilliant Canadian TV show from the very early 90s. Mm-hmm. And it's basically about these group of kids who gather around the campfire at midnight to tell each other scary stories.
Ooh, that sounds cool. Ooh.
I just so happen to own all of the seasons. So what I'm going to definitely make sure to do after we get off this call is I'll forward you an episode to watch because I think you'll like it.
Oh, please do. That sounds really cool. I also remembered a couple others that I like to watch.
Let's hear them.
What We Do in the Shadows, the movie and the TV show, is amazing. I love them both so much. It's ridiculous. And then also another one that's kind of in the same vein as Gravity Falls. It's called Over the Garden Wall. And it was a limited series, mini-series on Cartoon Network. And it's animated, but it gives you the most spooky fall vibes you could ever imagine, like in an animated TV show. I highly recommend it. It's on Hulu. Go watch it.
It is officially added to the list.
And then I'll watch that What We Do in the Dark, or is that what it's called?
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Are You Afraid of the Dark? You watch Over the Garden Wall. We'll discuss.
We will. We will indeed. And on that note, this is the perfect time, I think, to say goodbye. Emma, just can't thank you enough so much for once again taking the time to speak with me today. It was a pleasure and a privilege.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always a privilege to be here. So.
Well, you're very humble. And for anyone who isn't already, you can still be a backer on Kickstarter for Foundlings. You can follow Emma on Instagram at Emma Kubert. Make sure to also follow at Inkblot Comic as well to stay updated for all of the Inkblot related news. And my name is Jordan Clays here again on behalf of Lousy With. Happy Halloween, and we'll talk to you soon.